Good afternoon, my friends. It's December 20th, 2019. Tomorrow is the solstice, and as it's a time that in the past we would be celebrating perhaps the shortest day of the year, or celebrating the renewal of a new season, or hopefully spring coming soon. Instead, we're rushing to Black Friday and into our commercialized world to buy a variety of different things that we may or may not need for people that may or may not want them. And that sounds a little bit cynical, but believe me, it's not. I enjoy the holidays as long as it doesn't become something that's a burden for people. So this year I don't have any anxiety. I mean, I bought a few gifts. That's really not the point of this video, of course, at all. It's about surveillance. But I thought I would start it off on a nicer note. It is the holidays and all. It's a great time of year, but it's the time of year where people do a lot of shopping. And the reason I brought that up is because when you shop, everything you buy pretty much is documented and recorded and sold to people. The information about every product you buy, and especially considering how many of us use our debit cards. I'm just going to say, I carry cash, and I prefer to use cash at least 90% of the time when I can. I use my card when I have to make a large purchase. I use my card when I rent a car, things like that, whatever it might be, which is pretty rare. But generally, I like to use cash because I don't like being tracked. It always amazes me how many people buy things like cigarettes and alcohol on their credit cards in this day and age, knowing that in the future your insurance companies may very well use that against your own children. So I jumped kind of far in there, and I guess I should back up for a moment and define the point of where I'm coming from here. We live in a surveillance world. It's just the way it is. I grew up in the 80s and 90s. I was thinking about this. Okay, I hit my teen years in the 80s, and through the late 80s and early to mid 90s were my years. And there was kind of a resurgence of this fuck the man kind of attitude back then. Just like in my kind of hippie nature, I grew my hair out, wore tie-dyes, went to Dead shows before Jerry died, yes. Actually got to see at least 10 shows with Jerry Garcia, which to me was, something I hold dear in my heart. Goddamn hippies. In that time, we talked, I remember talking a lot with people. I read 1984 when I was a teenager, and I thought, oh God, Orwellian vision is pretty grim. This idea that TVs are watching the people and there's cameras in everyone's house, and that you have to say certain things and your language is controlled, and the worst of all, thought crimes. But I always thought, this is more of something we're going to choose to do, that we're going to opt for, than something that's going to be forced upon us. In other words, I know the people will never willingly give up all their, you can never be forced to willingly give up all your information, but you can give it up willingly on your own if you feel like it's for a greater cause for yourself. And this would be the idea that every single person is immersed in the digital world, digital currency, buying everything off of Amazon. It's very difficult because you're kind of forced and corralled into that. Just like people have to use banks for certain transactions, that you can't even use cash for certain things, right? Well, there is an interesting kind of paradox. Like, as I watched people start willingly give up their information, I thought, well, I can see that the backlash from this, the excuse people make is, well, I'm not too worried about it. I've got nothing to hide. And you hear that more and more and more from people who are trying to say, well, I don't care if they have my information. I've got nothing to hide. That's another way of saying, oh, give me a pat on the back. I'm a good old citizen. And there was no better example of this than when we had the issue with basically the exposing of the NSA. And the exposing that showed that the NSA had been spying on American citizens. And then we were told, well, it's to protect your freedoms, it's to make sure that we get rid of terrorists. And therefore, the one who revealed it becomes the enemy. And the whistleblowers who are actually trying to help tell the American people they're being watched becomes the enemy. And I watched this unfold with just horror at how complacent American citizens have become. Because I'm not a conspiracy theorist, I know there are plenty of conspiracies out there, but my point is that I don't sit and dwell on the negative and look for all the faults and problems and things. I look at the reality of the situation and say, how bad has it gotten? And I've been watching it unfold for so long that it's, we all have to have the realization that there is no right to privacy in the United States. And it's not constitutionally protected. Sure, you have the right to a trial, and as many constitutionalists haven't even read the Constitution, it seems, because there are so many provisions that actually help Americans, but certain ones that... This is why we have an ever-evolving, list. This is why we had amendments to the Constitution in the first place. Amendments are nothing more than whoops, we forgot, or oops, we didn't think about this. And there haven't been any in a while, but the amendment to privacy should be a very important issue. And sure, you can pick apart the, and get into the semantics of what people meant when they wrote it. I don't want to get into the Constitution because it's really irrelevant. They had no idea the world that we were going to be living in today. Nobody could have predicted this. I mean, it's absolutely ludicrous. And all the kids growing up today are just used to it. They live in a digital world. I can't imagine what it's like to grow up never using an actual physical compass or reading a map. And I'm not saying people can't. I'm saying there's no need to. Everything is provided. You want to know something? You Google it. That Googling goes in your little list. And then those algorithms in the future might be used against you. So let's say that you have no interest in your privacy and you don't care. That's fine. If you've got nothing to hide. I just want people to consider this aspect. Your children, their diets, their habits, their buying habits as well, they will all be predicted in the future by your habits and by your buying habits and by the types of pictures you post on Facebook, the type of parent you are. There will be averages, of like how much a person, should we insure this person for health coverage? Well, no, look, he bought alcohol for like 5 years straight back here. He bought a lot of alcohol on his credit card. Or, oh no, this person smokes because they're buying tobacco. What right to privacy do we really have? It's interesting. The kids are one aspect of it, of course. Children have been marketed to. This is why laws are passed, why YouTube recently had all its problems in its multi-million-dollar lawsuit. If not, I don't know if it was in the billions, but it was a huge fine for the COPPA Act. And so all the YouTube creators had to declare whether or not they were a kids channel. And that had to do with kids' privacy. There's nothing wrong with that in my opinion. Because as a parent, I think my kids at the very least should not be marketed to directly as individuals. But these tech companies, and they lobby Congress to pass laws in their favor in order to make sure that they can keep tabs on you, to keep cookies on you, to make sure that they follow you from website to website. And every website you visit, there's little trackers left behind. And then you think, well, if I clear my cookies, which I don't know how many people, honestly, I've never looked at the statistics to see how many people actually clear their cookies in history, but you think, well, then I'm going to have to re-enter some passwords manually. We are lazy, too lazy to protect our own data, our own information, because we don't see the value yet. That's how I see it. So I guess one of the best examples of this is Alexa. I mean, all of these devices that you set in the middle of your room that is a giant microphone where you just think that it's only going to listen when you actually ask it to listen, you're fooling yourself. But that's fine. Maybe you don't care if it records everything you do, having sex, talking privately with your friends, whatever it might be. But, when you really think about it, having a giant microphone in your house and cameras on even on your systems, PlayStations, things like that, the camera on your computer, the camera on your phone, it might sound silly because I make YouTube videos. I put my face out there. This is what I call the willing mugshot. Everybody who's ever made a video or a Facebook account or anything has willingly put their mugshot online. and they are basically in a database where it's much easier to find us. Well, so be it. Most of us don't care about that. You can't really hide your face or your picture. But once you start attaching information to that, I can imagine that the data compilation on each one of us is pretty high. The chances of it being used for anything that is damaging to us is pretty slim. But overall, like I said, we can't predict the future. We just don't know how it's going to be used when the algorithms and the AI become so good that they can say, oh, this guy's a loser, don't insure him. Or don't hire this guy because back in '82, he posted something, or back, I guess not in '82, back in 2012, he posted something that, may have been derogatory, things like that. But like I said, the Alexa system and the voice and the video, it's so much worse now because they have the Ring system. And a lot of you probably know what this is. I'm guessing at least one of you has a Ring doorbell at your house. And I'm not going to sit here and diss it. I mean, if it's convenient for you and it works, so be it. For those of you who don't know what it is, it's a video doorbell system. Amazon can give you pretty good deals on these video and audio systems. Home security is what they call it. And it would be insecurity to me. In fact, I even watched a video recently where a guy spoke through the video system or the monitor in a lady's daughter's room and started talking all this shit to her. These systems that are supposed to be protected, of course, they're linked to the cloud. They're linked to the internet, so people can hack them. And the idea of me having cameras in my home that are connected to the internet, I'm just saying, if you want to have a home security system, please link it to a hard drive somewhere in your own home. Sending all of your family's pictures to the cloud and your constant video monitoring of what your kids do, that's what you're doing, in my opinion. Because there's no way that people aren't hacking these things and gaining this information and listening in. I mean, it's just like the OnStar in your car. And I'm not trying to panic people because a lot of you probably have these things. And so be it if it works for you. I will never have that in my house. I cover the cameras on my cell phone and on my computer, which, like I said, sounds stupid because I make YouTube videos and I'm always exposing myself. But certain apps, certain websites, certain software has been designed in order to say you're on a certain website, it can take a picture of you. And when we all use our phones a lot. So if you have a facing camera to you, it'll know exactly who you are. I mean, I'm just looking forward, that's all. And your kids, if you're letting your kids use your cell phone and they're on games and they're on kids' apps and stuff, how do you know they're not being constantly photographed and put into a database of how they play, what kind of games they like, maybe even what they're saying during those games? And so you either think I'm totally crazy at this point, or you're like, yeah, I know, it's probably true. And it is probably true, because everything can be saved now. So facial recognition, willing Facebook, mugshots, things like that, hey, that's all just part of the game. But one of the biggest concerns about this is that these aren't always accurate. You may have seen it was a while back, but there was a thing about Woody Harrelson. It looked like Woody Harrelson had robbed some store because it showed up as likely to be him. And of course it wasn't. It was some other dude that looked just like him. But these things are not always accurate, and people are likely to rely on them, just like they relied on facial recognition from human beings, which we called eyewitness testimony. The most recent studies on eyewitness testimony show that it is highly unreliable and should never be admissible in court as solid evidence. And generally it isn't, because we know that eyewitness testimony fails. People's memories are faulty. When it comes to AI, we're more likely to trust it, but it's maybe not faulty because it's dumb or because it was mistaken, but because it's picking the wrong angles, or it could even be a glitch. We don't know. So these are just my thoughts on all this, and one of the last notes I'd like to make is the DNA ancestry websites, which is kind of the I guess that it's the final straw, right? A lot of people who use these DNA websites send their DNA in, it gets saved in a database. You sign away the rights to your DNA. It can be used in any way. In other words, when you sign up to find out your supposed ancestry, which isn't always accurate or mean anything. I've seen documentaries where people sent in several of the same blood sample and it came back as different areas. They say they'll give you like if you want a more reliable, up to 70% chance that it's accurate, then you have to pay more, that kind of stuff. The point is that they have a database of different bloodlines, different people, and this has been used to convict people, you know. And you might say that that's a benefit, that's a good thing. Is it? Because it sets precedents for an invasion of privacy beyond anything we've seen before. And the technology is allowing us to look into people's lives that we may have no other way to convict or no other evidence. And DNA may be found to be faulty in the future, you know, not faulty in the sense that, you know, it's all in how well it's identified, right? I guess the only thing that we can see this leading into is the thought crimes. The idea that if enough information is gathered on one person, that they could be arrested on the idea that they may be planning a crime. It could be a one-man conspiracy based on their buying habits, their information about who they are and things they've posted and whatnot. And so I guess I have to say these things because there's a lot of people that won't, but also because there's a lot of things that I'm smart enough not to talk about. I just kind of cringe when people bring up certain subjects, especially when it pertains to like, I can protect myself, or, you know, I've got this and that. Now, here, let me show you my arsenal online, or other people who start making death threats to other people, doing, you know, stupid things like that to get yourself on a list of idiots, you know. I don't know. It's a really weird time because when you look at what's happening in China right now, if you get caught jaywalking, for example, and you will because the cameras catch you, if you're jaywalking, your picture will come up on the other side of the street. It's like a public shaming kind of thing. And at the same time, you're docked credits from your Facebook number, if you will. It's their kind of Weibo example, you know, their version of a society. It's kind of like their credit rating, right? If you get too low of a rating because you've broken too many rules, or even if you've bought the wrong kinds of food or too much alcohol, let's say, or this or that, you get put on these lists and you lose your points to where you can't ride trains, you can't take buses, you're prevented from traveling, things like that. This is happening right now in China, and they're selling this surveillance to other countries. And Americans think, whatever, that'll never happen here. It's already happening here. The American government just does it a lot quieter. But I'm not even worried about them. I'm not as concerned about the U.S. government as I am about these huge media and corporate conglomerates which have much more power than the U.S. government ever will, because they have the power to dominate the tech industry and to dominate the airwaves, to dominate media. And this is why they'll always be on top. So until, I guess it's a decision, whether people are willing to give away their information willingly or stand up and protect the rights of future generations. And since we don't know where this is going, I guess we'll have to wait and see. But I'd love to hear all your opinions on it. Let me know. Talk to y'all later.